Good afternoon, colleagues. We will make a start, if that's okay. Welcome everybody to the January session of GSM Talks. Thank you all for coming along this afternoon, and Happy New Year to colleagues as well. We have one talk this afternoon, so I'm going to pass over to Kerry, Payne, the head teacher at Rowner Junior School, and Emily Weaver, assistant head teacher at Rowner Junior School, who are going to talk to us this afternoon about their opening doors journey on their English curriculum, but with lots of transferable skills across the curriculum and that can be applied across the key stages as well. So I'll pass over to you.
Thank you. Hello everyone. David's introduced us, so I won't do that bit again. So we're just going to run through this evening the differences that we've made to our English curriculum, the improvements that we've made. I think from the outset it's important to note that this has been a 6-year journey for Rowner Junior School, so it's taken quite a substantial amount of time to embed, but actually we're really proud of it. Also want to draw your attention to all of the actual real books that we've brought along this evening. So at the end of the session, if you actually wanted to see it live in practice, these are just a sample of books that we took from classrooms before we headed out this afternoon. So just to give you the context of Rowner Junior School, for those of you that don't know, we're a 2-form entry junior school and in the middle of quite a deprived demographic. We're 17 out of 427 on the adaptive currently, with one being the most deprived. That can mean that it can be quite challenging at times, but also obviously lots of fun. We do know that our children enter our Key Stage 1, our import school that shares the same site, at least 2 years behind on average within the vocabulary strand. That then unfortunately does narrow but doesn't close that gap as they travel into the junior school. And as children arrive with us, there is a significant gap for our disadvantaged learners, in particular within their vocabulary development, but also their writing. That direct link between their speaking and listening and their inability to write is very evident as they join us.
Okay, so Opening Doors is a English strategy. It's not a pick-up, it's not a scheme as such, but it's been coined by a man called Bob Cox, who we met in 2015. So his philosophy is all about opening doors to famous prose and poetry and exposing children to high-end, mostly heritage texts, thinking that if you've got really high-quality models, you can show their writing novel, you're going to get high-quality models that come out the other side. It's all about pitching to the top. So you pitch everything to the top and then you put the appropriate access strategies in so that everyone can access it, rather than pitching to the middle and stretching. You pitch to the top and then put in your appropriate access strategies so that everybody can access this high quality literature that sits at the centre of it. So
So where we started, so 6 years ago, we were in a position where we knew our English curriculum wasn't meeting the needs of our learners. We were making progress, but very much on a surface level. So our children had very good decoding skills, they had very good retrieval skills in their reading, but they couldn't infer, and they certainly couldn't access more challenging texts. Our English curriculum at the time had changed several times with successive English leaders who had come and wanted to try different things out. We then had the opportunity with the new curriculum coming and that new increased standard and expectation of reading in Key Stage 2 to make some real significant changes. We also had a commitment to ensure that our community loved literature and loved reading, knowing that for disadvantaged pupils in particular, that reading is then a barrier to the rest of their learning. And to be able to access the rest of the curriculum, we had to make sure that the English was right. So in 2015 we started our work with Bob Cox, and he's kind of been with us on the journey all the way through. He previously had been involved sort of light touch and then came in and did some inset training with us and inspired us to move forward and actually believe that we could give high quality heritage texts to our community and that we could get them to access them, learn from them and ultimately enjoy them.
So Bob Cox has the books that are over there. We started off, they've got units linked to text in them that you can pick up and run with. We started off at the beginning, picking them up, and then we started tweaking them, and now we take it as an approach that we apply to texts that most link to what we're doing and we feel most appropriate at the time. So what's made the difference? So our choice of text that we're looking at in our English and reading lessons, some are extracts, some are whole novels, some are larger extracts, some are shorter extracts, but these are some of the authors that our children are exposed to over the time from year 3, so from 7 up to year 6 to 11. And it's an ever-expanding range. We've played around with quite a few of them, always looking for new ones as well to use, and then we use that and slot that in alongside more modern children's literature, so we can try and get a balance for them and make links where we can. So I'm going to just run through some of the strategies that we've taken from the Bob Cox opening doors, and then I'm going to show you a couple of learning journeys, and then at the end there's just some writing outcomes that you can share and you can have a little look at. So one of the big changes is Bob's idea of a big overarching question. So it's often a challenging question that sets up the writing, but is also used to unpick an extract that you're looking at, and there's lots of comprehension skills through as well. And what we've found is if we focus the big question, children then have that in mind through the whole unit that they're doing. It allows them to build up a toolkit and look at what the author's done in the extract that they're looking at, and then they can take all the little tools along the way, and then they try and replicate that in a similar setting, or they apply it to something else. So some of the big questions that we've looked at this year, we've got how did J.M. Barrie create a sense of danger in his description of the Jolly Roger. So we looked at some extracts from Peter Pan, and then we went on to look at some extracts from Treasure Island as well, looked at how they built danger through character and settings, and then that was applied to the setting and character descriptions they did. Year 3 one there, how does Hans Christian Andersen make the palace sound like a magical place? So the focus was how can you tweak your writing to make it sound magical, and then they went on to apply that. How does Lecter convey the horrors and emotion of war? Got emotions of high flight there, and how does the author hint that things haven't always been the same? So there's always a big overarching question, often quite challenging, that kind of sets it all up, but then that will build a toolkit for them to then write their own. Access strategies. So when we looked back and reflected on what we were doing, we were kind of on a linear journey in English where the tasks were set based on what we thought you could do at the beginning. So we were actually capping children by not opening it up at the top end. So the kind of switch of aiming at the top and then trying to put the strategies in to make sure that everybody can get there has been massive for us. And the people it's had the most positive impact on are our children that were working below or are working below age-related expectations, because they always surprise us. And they quite often do bits of work at the end that if we'd have planned the journey for them and thought what they could do, we wouldn't have ever got there if we'd given them closed answers or we'd given them a writing frame. But actually exposing them to the vocabulary, they might not access all of it, but actually exposing them to that vocabulary, the outcomes that we're getting from them at the end have just been, even like nodding, but always surprised. Like people are always coming in with books and going, look what so-and-so did. Just because by exposing them to it and not cutting them off, it's been massive.
I think for disengaged boys as well, so that had always been a challenge group for our area, certainly in the infant school there was boy-girl gender gap on entry and writing. Actually for boys who at times can lack motivation, we found they are really engaged, because as soon as you say, this is really hard, I think we're going to have to really work together. It's funny how that motivates them. We're all doing this, every single one of us is going to answer that question. The motivation factor that has is huge for those disaffected groups that we have.
And I think when Bob Cox told us at the beginning, he was like, yeah, you can sit down and you can do great expectations with year 5. And we went Miss Havisham, we pretty much laughed him out of the room. But we've done it. And the outcomes have been really, really pleasing. So, what's it look like? So I picked a year 3 and I picked a year 6 end of the journey. So this was our year 3 unit that they've done on magical setting description. So if we're doing a setting description, it will always have a slant on it. We won't just do character and setting description. When we did it in the autumn term, the whole school were doing character and setting, but year 3 were focusing on creating this feeling of magic. Year 4 were mystery and kind of suspense. Year 5 were pulling on inference skills, so they were trying to hint that it hadn't always been this way and drop little hints of like a backstory. and then year 6 were doing danger through kind of inference. So it kind of builds up as we go. So we would never just do, well, we're going to write a character description of this character. They'd always be a look, and then we find a heritage text that shows that, so they can learn from that and then apply it to their own. And that's been massive because it allows them to tweak what they're doing to the purpose and audience that they're writing. So they use samples from Peter Pan, which was the description of the Mermaid Lagoon, Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid, description of the Mermaid Castle. The big question was, how do we make the lagoon or palace sound magical? Then there's the grammar skills that are taught, so we will teach grammar skills along the way, similes, metaphors, devices, punctuation, so that will get taught alongside appropriate to what we're teaching. And then the outcome was they wrote setting description linked to the new Mary Poppins film, so the children get sucked down a pump hole in the bath and then thrown into this magical underworld adventure. So that's what they were provided to. So we always do a hook in, so we're very unlikely to just give them the text. We try and hook them in before we even give it to them. So when we did our Jolly Roger one, we put up things like Candle of the Seas and got into the hole, and they had to guess kind of what it was. And in this one, the year 3 team got them to, this was the first line of the text, so if you shut your eyes and a lucky one, you may at times see a shapeless pool with lovely pale colours suspended in the darkness. Then if you squeeze your eyes tighter, and they kind of played the whole session of giving more clues, didn't you? And they had to guess what it was. And by the end of it, they just really wanted to know what it was. And it sounds twee, but they love it. So there were some of the clues that they got along the way. And then we quite often, not always, the tasted draft strategy is quite useful. So at this point, you would just say, right, go for it. Write me 3 sentences, 4 sentences, based on how you think that would be, or we share a little bit of the text and then say just finish it for me in 2 sentences. It's a really nice, high challenge, low threat way of just kind of getting an idea of where they are, what the starting point is for that. And then it's also quite a nice comparison to come back to at the end. We quite often do excellent responses as well, but then I realise the one to remember, but just some little hints along the way. Text marking has been massive for us. So this is a year 3 version where they've gone through and picked out some of the word choices they didn't think they would know. So when we text mark, we go through it thoroughly together, expecting them to do it independently because we really want that good understanding of the text. And if we get them to do it independently from the outcome, you don't always get that and you get people to drop off. So there's no reason and no excuse to not completely understand that text when we're talking about it later. The use of pictures, I've just put some example access strategies along the way. So that was the first text that they were looking at. And then that was the second one from the Little Mermaid. So this is year 3, year 7, just out of they all have pictures in year 3, I think, and then we kind of trim it off as we get to year 6. So kind of getting their teeth into some quite meaty texts. And then we text mark, everybody text marks, so that's a year 3 example of what text mark looks like. So as we go through it, talk about the mental thinking behind some of the choices that the author's made, or word understanding, they're expected to text mark in the book. It's quite a free process, so when you look at my year 6 books, they're disgusting, in terms of there's like ideas everywhere, but we try and encourage that it's not linear, so you can use the space on the page and everybody records in a slightly different way. So that was year 3's first attempt, I think, at text marking. So they've just picked out some bits that they liked. You've got ellipsis there. They've got some background knowledge, so it's similar to something else I know. And then after we've done that and they've got really good understanding of that text, we then will introduce a big question. So that one was how do they make it sound magical? There's a couple of access strategies there. So the SEND have got a slightly different version. That's not always the case, that might just be one that they're using that day. And the little questions around the edge. You've got this big meaty question in the middle, but actually we found if you then break it down into little questions around the edge, when you put them all back together again, answers the big question really thoroughly, that's been really helpful. And we go for grading layout, so we were finding if we gave children a list, we gave them those questions in a list, they'd all think the first one was the easiest and the last one was the hardest. So your SEND would always start on number 1 and never get to stand out on 4, and your great step writers would always be wanting to get to number 4 and wouldn't really do 1, 2 and 3 properly. So by doing it this way and saying there is no start point where you're answering questions, sometimes you end up with children really challenging themselves because they pick to start on the hardest one, but actually then there's the safety of being able to go, I'm not quite sure on that one, I'm going to dip into something else. So that's been really good. And the white space on the page, we leave quite a lot of blank space just for them to annotate and think around, so it kind of becomes theirs and they own it. And the children will do it in different ways. Some of them will annotate off of it, some of them will colour code and then answer their questions, some of them will answer as they definitely get more confident towards year 6. They don't need the outside questions anymore, they go for the middle question. But they're quite big ideas. So in year 6 we're doing how do you convey the horrors of war, the horrors and emotion of war. They're quite big questions that they are then able to unpick and answer. And by the end of it they've got a toolkit of how this author's done it. So I think their year 3, verbally they were really good, but they were struggling to kind of write them down. So again, they've just got an access strategy around the edge that they can dip into if they need to, or you can direct them that they might want to do that. So there's an example of year 3. So she's colour coded it and then answering their questions on the side. So quite kind of thinking quite deeply about it. So there was some of the, I think it's magic because it's been described as the loveliest, and there's also light streaming out and sounds magical, the light is beaming from the palace. The author transports you to the palace by saying there are gleaming pearls and saying the roof is made of muscle shells. This makes it sound like fantasy. So already in year 3 they're starting to structure comprehension answers quite well.
And they're quoting from the text and their responses in year 3, which is a new skill for them.
So first draft then of their own, the skills are then obviously taught in between. Year 4 have done a lot, 3 have done a lot of front-of-that program, which you'll probably be able to tell them in it. But again, we try and slow down the writing process and editing and improving. All of the pink is them. So you see in any pink in the book, it's the child self-editing, apart from my later I didn't have a different colour pen, but on the whole it is mostly children, and we really try and put it back on them now. So editing and improving is actively taught from year 3 all the way up to year 6. We start it in small chunks, so it might just be a punctuation edit, and then we'll do adding and taking things away, then we'll do if you need to up level or not, as the case may be. So we build up the skills, and again, by the time you see the year 6 piece, they really are ripping it apart, redrafting, and they probably keep going, some of them. And then that's an example, the final piece for year 3 child. Read it?
Yes, please.
If you shut your eyes and take a deep breath, you will find yourself falling into a sparkling salt water and sapphire ocean. There is gold, falling confetti, an open treasure chest, rocks on the seabed. You will see a broken sail, a beautiful dolphin, and a colossal dangling anchor. They've done front-end photos and lists. The bright metallic glistening gold coins are scattering all over the seabed. The rocks are sparkling because the coins are shining in the sun. On the seabed, coins are streaming out of the chest, and the sky is as blue as the loveliest cornflower. The beautiful foamy floating bubbles are pearly white and float up to the sea surface. Behind the bubbles is a big pirate ship. The bubbles are enormous, monstrous and gigantic, and if you walk through them you might end up with one. The tinier bubbles, all huddled together, give the illusion of white clouds, although bigger individual ones are transparent. And that is run-of-the-mill ARE. We tried not to pick greater depth. They're kind of our best writer.
Expectations in term 1.
And then to show you the end of what it might look like. So this was an SEND child, didn't pass the Key Stage 1 phonics screening, below expectations. So if you shut your eyes, you can see where they're kind of taping and drawing off J and Barry, and take a deep breath, you will see all the fishes, great and small, as they shine many colours. As you shut your eyes tighter, you see an amazing emerald seagrass swaying. In the distance rests a submerged ship. Abandoned and alone, it is very deep, deeper than the anchor cables can ever reach.
So they've stuck closer to the module. A lot of their words and phrases you'd see in the original text, but actually for them it's about being able to put that in a different context with the different sentence starters that they might have learned, and trying to join it together with some accurate punctuation. If you look at his original, there is the punctuation accurate, which was a big step for him.
So this was the year 6 one. We've just, when we did World War 1 and 2, we looked at High Flight, which is a poem by John McGee, and it's a sonnet. So we were looking at how to convey the emotions of high flight, was the big question. We'd already taught personification metaphors, similes, verb choices, hadn't taught sonic structure, so it was kind of a bit of application there. And then the outcome, ideally, was their own sonnet, maybe poem, which kind of explored the idea of flight. So this is the journey we went on. So again, we didn't introduce the text straight away, we got them really into kind of the idea of flight, showed them pictures of videos of Spitfires, showed them pictures of birds, kind of got the idea and started generating vocabulary from the beginning in terms of what flight would feel like rather than what you would see. Then we ordered, sifted through it, kind of got a really nice word bank going as a class, and we did start off with words like, what's flight like? Oh, it's nice.
It's good.
And then by the end of that session, we got to things like I can't remember what it was, you're leaving the bounds of Earth, things like that. So kind of, we built it up quite quickly, just by sifting through and looking at how appropriate it was. Then on this one, we used music as a hook in, so we had 3 different bits of classical music, all that we could convey flight in quite different ways. So we had Swan, from Swan Lake, kind of with the animals, and then quite a military base, kind of sounded like planes. So we looked through and looked at the difference. Again, we collected vocabulary along the way. Taste the draft then came in. They had to try and write a poetic phrase. It was a disaster. But
It was a
again,
good formative assessment because
yeah,
we really had to start right at the beginning.
then we introduced the text. For poetry, we took the opportunity to just look at poetry is always a bit of an issue for us at the PhD paper because they read to the end of the line and stop, and then they go on to the next line. So we looked at how you can read through the lines, and that will then build our meaning. So we had a little play around with how if you were writing it kind of in bits that link to what you end up with, and they all kind of went, oh yeah, now I understand it a bit better. So that's the first part of the original poem. And then that was us again playing around with the order of it. And then the second part in black. And then, because I just wanted to show the value of the text marking process really, I got them in their books to give me a summary of what they felt the poem was about. So this person has got on the left there, I think it's a poem about a man in the sky or something. He's flying a Spitfire and he quite likes being up there. So that's kind of on their surface level of still where they're looking, so it's still taking lots of coaching. I'd say the Year 6 has got significantly better at it already. And actually, she then edited it after we've done our text of art to the bit, I think it's a soldier trying to escape war, and that he goes to heaven at the end because he's died. So they were starting to pull out that it was a metaphor, and we had a really interesting debate about it. So there's this bit at the end that said, I put my hand out and touched the face of God, that bit. And then when we were talking about it, after we'd done our big question, so less structure, less little questions, but still the little questions there if you wanted to use them. And then I got my class to sum up what they thought the poem was about. And this was the conversation they were having at the end. So they put, is it a metaphor for someone dying and being released from war and the freedom that this gives him? Is it a dream of his about how it would feel if you were really able to escape the bombs of war? Or is it a reflection of how he feels when he's flying and the ability to, for a moment, leave war behind and feel free? So the kind of level of conversation that we got to was high. And then this was an example of the marching big question, so untrespassed sanctity of space. I think it means he's in a sacred place that's so high nobody has been there except for him. It makes flight exciting because he wants to fly into the sacred space and escape the horrors of the earth. So you can see the progression from hopefully from year 3 to year 6 in terms of how they're now independently answering these questions. So for these guys, we help them with the text mark, and then they answer the questions now. And we'll just draw back as the year goes on. Then Bob Cox calls it Wings to Fly, which kind of leads on to the independent piece. And I just put this in to show you that the kind of choice that by the end of year 6 we're giving them. So we just give them a load of ideas really. and then they can decide what they're going to focus on. So we'd already looked at sonnets at this point and unpicked the structure, so they knew that. But there's lots of kind of ideas chucked at them. If you're struggling, take one of the lines of the poem and write a poem about that, so there's kind of nowhere to hide in terms of sitting there going, I can't do it. And then lots of drafting, like I said. You can see I counting out the syllables of a sonnet on the left-hand side, which is quite cute. But it caused frustration, didn't it, now? Like, we had like paper being ripped out and stuff just being, you can see she just crossed through loads of it. But we kind of encourage it. So when you look at that, it looks messy, but it's also real writing. We do then publish at the end, because you can't quite work out what's going on. And we don't, it's things like handwriting. If you're drafting at this stage, if you're drafting to that kind of quality and really thinking about it as a writer, that's not going to be something we're going to look at. When you publish though, that's your chance to really kind of focus and get the best bit out that you possibly can. More drafting there. And more practice. And then this is what we've got. So, roaming home. Oh, I felt the freedom of the sky and carried scraps through the burning blue. Sliding down the globe, I dread to die, then could only think of what I had to do. To other men, the blue is the limit, but to me it's my humble home. In the void, I can rule the cold summit. Through the footless, ghostly heavens I roam. Dreams take flight when you tell the earth to top the atmosphere is everything. Through the sky I soar as the clouds give birth, and I plummet the sky on silver wings. Birds welcome me back to the land, so the calm blue leave my rigid hands. So they've had a go at the sonnet,
And who wrote that?
And then there's the synthesis of that.
Yeah, so this is a disadvantaged, very deprived, all sorts of agencies involved, school refuser previously, now engaging in writing a sonnet. And I think just in terms of his engagement, and he was one of our frustrated ones who I remember being in the lesson and him just standing there saying, I just can't get it. And then he managed to produce that as an outcome, and that's because it was really slowed down those very small steps and those real opportunities to go back. And some of it was with an adult, some of this is guided redrafting. They don't just magically wake up one day and are able to see the errors or the ways that they could improve it, but through that conferencing, able to then take it forward. And this then was a hugely independent application. We're obviously really proud of him because of his background and where we've come with him, but in terms of just achieving ARE already and showing all that sign of vocabulary development and understanding of the text, will only help him be more successful in his next steps.
There's another example here. I picked this one because they've kind of taken on board what we said about writing through the lines. So, whereas that other one was like first line, second line, third line, whereas this one goes, say, destroyed, worried, abandoned, wings have flew. That's how you know like have flew. Fluttering everywhere, the wings have found this, the giant disastrous beast, but knew this beast that could not reach him on high ground. So they've kind of taken it that extra step further and are writing through the lines of the sonnet, but still keeping the sonnet pattern on each line. So, and then I brought an example of an EHCP girl that we've got in year 6 who's currently working year 1 level if you go for assessments that we're doing. Probably likely to go to specialist provision. And this was her learning journey. So again, the pictures have stayed, and you can see that she is supported as we have gone through that. Extra scaffolds and extra mini questions to help her answer the question. First draft. And then this is what we ended up with. No one likes the voice of cold, dark war. You could hear the empty, tortured soul's cry. I reached the point where I could take no more. Dreams became real and I took to the sky. At last I slipped the surly bonds of earth, free to roam the untrespassed myth of space. Higher and higher through tumbling murk, where the top of the atmosphere with easy grace. Blissful silence fills the gentle fresh air. The higher I soar, the further I reach. No beauty could ever compare. Venturing through these clouds I see home. But alas, I'll never make it there. The clouds call home now and heard my prayer. So a few more useful tools. I've kind of talked through most of them as we've gone through, but just to recap. So the big radial questions have had a huge impact in terms of not limiting the ceiling that you're putting on, especially on our lower attaining children. Text marking, as you can see, has progressed a lot, but it just really unpicks those really challenging texts, and what we've found is if they can deal with those, they're going to be able to deal with anything. They give them on the Key Stage 2 paper, but we're also accessing higher level text when we're reading as a class as well. The Bob Cox little think engines are really handy, so they're just like little scaffolds along the way to prompt thinking. So things like what do you see, what do you think, what do you wonder when you first read a picture, read a text or see a picture, what are you informed of, what can you infer, atmosphere, evidence, comments, and he does like these little think engines along the way just to kind of get you thinking. There's loads of examples if you want, and we've got some examples in the specific focus on the purpose. So there they wanted to kind of get across that high flight was releasing them from war. So again, they'd had this purpose built up through looking at the examples. The text reveal, kind of hooking them into the text before we give it to them, that was massive. I think for our children, if we just gave them it and kind of left them to it, they'd be like switched off straight away. The taster drafts are a really good way of quickly assessing where you are, but low threat, high challenge. And we really had to slow the writing process down. So year 3 last term did setting for the last half term. You know, it took the whole of the half term. When we did our dangerous character settings, it took us a half term to do it. Those poems took 4 weeks to write. We've really slowed it down. We've really put emphasis on the editing and improving, because our children don't get it right first time. They have to go and check. They have to go and spell check. But actually, if we're teaching the skills for them to do it independently, and what you would find if you look back in our books 2-3 years ago, you'd see a draft that then a teacher just went through and had corrected all of the mistakes for them, but they weren't learning anything from it. Whereas now, all of those edits that you see they're doing, and it might mean that what you get in the end isn't perfect, but it's on them. And then we would still go through their drafted copy with them and go, well, look, do you think you could check this? Do you think you could do that? And then they're quite happy, even on their finished ones, to just get a pencil and cross it out, or write it out 3 times. So I'll let you go. So I've just got some other examples here, so which I thought might be quite useful. So this was an independent write, so we've done the setting description about creating danger with year 6, and then this was kind of, we revisited just before Christmas, and this is kind of their independent time to apply. We'll build it up a little bit based on Christmas Carol, but it was this whole idea of it being kind of a jolly festive season, and then because of Scrooge, it like slowly sucks the life out of the setting. And this is what we came up with. In the distance, the bells pealed, pronouncing the start of the festive season. At the heart of the town, the smell of roasted chestnut wafted through the air, triggering people's sweet tooth. The seller, who loved this busy time of year, was overjoyed to have a line around the block for his sweet celebrational goodies. With people crowded everywhere, the Yuletide season had truly begun. Like St. Nick's mythical sleigh, the snow drifted through the town, blinding the night with ice-white dust. The eager shoppers scurried around in the now dimly lit market. As the night ate up the city, a deluge of white fell like an explosion of ice and sugar. As an intricate snowflake weaved through the lit houses, the joy and laughter slowly but surely left the ears of those who worked down Bluebell Street. Unlike the lane was dull and dark. Here lived the infamous Scrooge. Christmas was guzzled down by this man's greed and hatred for Christmas. To him, it was just another day, if not the worst day of all. And that would be an independent piece that I would put in the portfolios for everyone. So there's just some examples that we had of our character description when we did Jay and Barry. Just make it easy for me. This is my personal favourite, so this is a character description, and when you get to the bottom, every law follower shudders at her build. Buxom and agile, voluptuous legs, slim and muscular arms. Her blush and rosy complexion is flaked with acne. Emerald eyes reflecting the truth, the captain's strawberry blonde hair, thick and unshorn in corkscrew curls, had noticeable split ends. Her vacant smile was as hypnotising as a siren singing an enticing love ballad. Briefly, she looked around her before hiding her thin face.
And I think what's interesting about that was the little girl who wrote that is obsessed with romance fiction, and us trying to break her cycle of independent choice of books is to go to teenage romantic novels, and you're trying, and then she still wrote it. So.
Year 5 there looked at all lower, so they were kind of looking at hinted at the past when they were doing the navy. I think you can see there that they're trying new skills, kind of inferring and dropping hints to the reader. And things like, they wouldn't get things like this if they hadn't read like heritage texts before. There was silence, it was quiet, very quiet, too quiet. They just picking out little bits along the way that they then are then applying to their own. I think that bit as well. However, her instinct told her something was wrong, and experience told her that her instinct was never wrong. So they're kind of picking up ideas as they go along that they wouldn't be doing if we weren't exposing them to that. And I'll just end on our little Year 5 who has dropped off the bottom of all of our tests that we've got in school. So Captain Lizzie, who was cheerful and loyal, was walking around like there was no tomorrow. At lunchtime, Captain Lizzie stared around with her cat-like eyes, and she knew that something was wrong. Those who knew Captain Lizzie well knew that she had changed from the calm and respectful person she once was. Captain Lizzie calmly strolled along the sandy, lovely sea. In truth, she was unsure and scared. Confused, Lizzie scratched her hair with worry. The sunset gleamed on. Captain Lizzie's shiny, glittery hair made a rainbow.
And you'll quite be pleased to hear, or not, because it was lovely just listening to you read those stories. Thank you so much. We welcome any questions, but also we really, really would welcome you to spend some time just looking. We did bring some of the sort of exercise books along. We just picked a sample. There's every year group represented, but also Bob Cox's lovely books over here if you wanted to have a quick flick through. I'm sure David's going to mention it, but there is a project going to be happening very soon which links Key Stage 2 and 3, linked to Bob Cox and the work, and he's actually going to come and do some work with us. This is hopefully giving you a nice carrot and something to really look forward to now. But then thank you very much.
Huge thanks to Kerry and Emily there for sharing the journey that Rowner Junior School have been on with their English curriculum. It's certainly got me thinking about some of those access strategies and how so many of those strategies could be used across the curriculum in all sorts of areas to help the youngsters access the key vocabulary and the text that we're using. So it's given me food for thought, so thank you so much. Please do have a look at the examples of the pupils' work. It was so lovely to hear and see some of those examples and the amazing work that's been produced. So thank you for sharing that with us as well. As Kerry mentioned, there is going to be a Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3 cross-curricular project, so there will be some more information coming about that. But hopefully this has given colleagues a taster today. Please do, when you go back into school, please do talk to colleagues about what you've seen this afternoon. We've talked about making this presentation available, which would be fantastic, so thank you very much. But please do talk to colleagues and encourage colleagues to come along to the February GFM talks, which will move to the first Thursday in February, and details will come out very soon. So thank you again to both. If you've got questions, please do ask Kerry or Emily. Please do have a look at the pupils' work and have a lovely evening. Thank you very much.